Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. Thank you to ChiroSecure for inviting me to speak to you once again. Spoke to you about to the 14th of last month where we were talking about enrolling with Medicare and what that means, box 24J, raising your hand. But today, as promised, we're going to talk about that ABN form. The new one was released, and we're going to get right into that topic today. So let's go ahead. Let's get those slides going so we can get you guys moving with the learning you came here for today. Again, we're going to cover that new ABN form. Medicare, we had waited for quite a while, and once Medicare had released it, we all kind of had to sit there and decipher what did they say in in the Medicare ABN form instruction this time, and we realized there were some changes that took place, and that's why I wanted to pause just to see what they would say. But there is still some time out with the jury, so you'll get what I'm saying with that statement in just a moment. So, like I said, what we're going to cover is we're going to learn some of the differences between what is on the voluntary, for what constitutes voluntary and mandatory ABN, what that means, some options you have around that voluntary. We'll also talk about when to utilize the ABN form. We're going to talk about the deadlines for implementation of the new form. And then we're going to discover changes with the QMB patients. So, a lot to cover in this short little time together. So, let's stick on our seatbelts and let's go for this ride. Just so we can start off right off the bat, everybody's wanting to know, when do I have to have it in the practice? Or maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. But Medicare did issue that new ABN form. As you recall, we had down at the very bottom of the form expiration 3/2020. It long went by, and we had to wait all the way until towards the end of June, first part of July to see that they actually had finally gotten it together and said, "We have one for you. Here's your new deadline." So we didn't get one before the expiration date, but we now have an expiration date of implementing this new form. And as you see here on the screen, that is August 31st of this year. It's going to last us for a few years. You'll see that with the new expiration date that you'll notice here in a few minutes. But let's just ride this out together and see what we can discover. Now, first, a disclaimer. Medicare's ABN form instructions were better this time, but they weren't as concise as they needed to be. So, KMC University, we went to Medicare, we asked one question, and they answered it right away, feeling hopeful that we would get an immediate response on our extra questions that we have, which I think are about six of them now, just to get clarity. And I get an email that I'll show you right towards the very end of this presentation where they say, we need some more time. We've got to meet together. Let us get back to you. So we are waiting, and that jury is still out on some of those final pieces of that ABN form instruction that just aren't crystal clear for us at this point. So last time we met, we talked about being enrolled or not enrolled. That was the question, if you remember. And there were a lot of other either ors that we still had to discuss. So, like I said, we crossed that one off the list and we're going to work on a few more of them today. Let's just see how far we can go. I can promise you we're going to talk about the mandatory and voluntary ABN, what's covered, what's not covered. We'll hit the highlights of some of these other things that you'll discover as we go along. So, Medicare states there are several, probably the top five issues with ABN forms, and they notice this as they are going through and processing, or just how when they ask for records, they want to see the ABN form. What's wrong with them? Well, they don't have a patient signature. We'll talk about that because the mandatory ABN has to have the patient signature. What about box F? We have no cost estimates in there. We'll say, oh, Medicare doesn't cover this, this is why, and we leave the cost blank. They have this is an advance notice. They need to know what to expect. They're signed on every single visit. You can save your trees. You do not have to have one signed on every single visit. Medicare even says that. They have a Medicare Learning Network publication that states that it's misinformation when you feel that you have to have one signed at every single visit. Maybe it's missing the notifier information at the top. Maybe you simply forgot to put your practice name and specify all that out and get all the patient name and any identifying information there. That can make it invalid. Or the one we see all the time at KMC University is that we have a mix of the covered. We'll explain this in a minute. And the statutorily excluded services on the exact same ABN. You mean I can't have everything from the first visit on my ABN form? You cannot. There is one that's called a mandatory, and that has our covered services. And then there's one that's called a voluntary that has our statutorily excluded services. And we'll dig a little bit further into what covered is and what statutorily excluded is as we go along. So again, is it a yes or a no? Let's unravel it. But we'll see here that we have covered services on one side. Yes, they cover it. And then we have excluded services on the other. No, they don't. And these two, actually, I can change the wording just a little bit to make it more clear. Covered's going to change and excluded. Let's watch. Covered's in the blue and excluded's in the green. Whoa, we have mandatory ABN on the covered side, and we have voluntary ABN on the statutorily excluded side. Right there alone tells you they shouldn't be on the same form. But let's keep digging. So mandatory. Mandatory means it's required. You can't squeak by without it. Remember from last time, it's not a workaround to being enrolled, but you can't squeak by. And it's only for spinal CMT services. Well, let's think about it. When we think about how Medicare and chiropractic works together, we know that Medicare only covers three services: the spinal CMT, the 1 to 2 region, the 3 to 4, and the 5, 98940, 98941, and 98942. That's it. It's covered. The question is it payable by Medicare? That's where you have the separation between active care and maintenance care. And it's over here when maintenance starts that we have to get the ABN form signed. It's mandatory. We have to do this. And there's usually only a one or two reasons why that we have to include it. And again, it's not that opt out that we talked about back in July. Voluntary means it's not required. You volunteer to do something, nobody made you do it, you're just stepping up to do it on your own. It's for all those statutorily excluded services, the one Medicare never covers. Let's think about that. That's your therapies, your x-rays, your exams, your nutritional products, your nutritional counseling. All of those things that Medicare never covers would go on a voluntary ABN form. And again, they're two separate things. It's just good business practice to make sure your Medicare patient knows in advance about the exams and all those other services Medicare would never cover, but it's not required as it is with the ABN form for the mandatory spinal CMT services. And we actually at KMC University recommend when you're doing it for voluntary purposes that you don't even use the Medicare ABN form. I know the air just sucked out of your body and we're going to have a discussion, and you probably are saying, I've got to talk to this lady, she doesn't understand. We actually do. And like I said last time, anytime that we give information from KMC University, we always make sure to have reference. It's not just from our understanding, it's actually pinpoint reference straight from Medicare themselves. You can see here that one of those situations straight from Medicare. They say these instructions should only be used when the ABN is used to transfer potential financial liability to the beneficiary and not in, there it is, voluntary instances. Just like I said on that last one, it doesn't have to be for voluntary. It's really not for that. You can, but my goodness, the rules you have to follow and jump through, and you have to include another modifier. And Lord knows we have enough of those. And then more information on dual eligibility beneficiaries may be found. That's that QMB. And as you recall, we were going to talk a little bit more about that today because that's a big, big change with the new ABN form layout. So let's talk about it a little bit further. Covered, not covered. Uh, Statutorily excluded. Yvette, help me. So when we see here in that first block, we talk about the covered and payable. Remember I said that word payable? That is the active treatment AT modifier worthy. I can prove it. I have the documentation. The patient's still having some dysfunction. I'm still making improvement. We're still on track with our goals. Everything's laid out beautifully according to what Medicare says you have to have. You stick an AT, it's covered, it's payable. Now we have covered. This is maintenance. Medicare specifically says when we have, I kind of say it's stalemated, the patients reach the best they can be. They're not going to have the same goals as an active 20-year-old or someone who's never had a problem in their life. They may be osteoporotic, they may be having some degeneration, they have sometimes some advanced diseases or dysfunctions that will prevent them from being at this patient will have zero pain, this patient will have full range of motion. It may never happen, but there's a point that they're no longer making the progress. No more would you expect them to get better, that they've maxed on you. They're going to maintenance. There's more art to it, but you kind of get what I'm saying there. That's a covered service because spinal CNT is, but it's not payable. That's maintenance. That's why this is mandatory, is because sometimes Medicare will cover it, and then there's certain conditions where Medicare will not cover it. That's why it's mandatory to let that patient know when there is a service that Medicare would otherwise cover. Now, when we look down below, we'll see some of those that were statutorily excluded I mentioned. The ABN is not required. We saw that on the previous screen. And then we look at the actual services that may include. We have an extremity CMT, we have x-rays, products, supplies, therapies, exams, and any alternative treatment protocols. Medicare says you can do them, I'm not paying. And also, here's just a key element. You better charge the Medicare patient for that service, because simply thinking they can't afford it is not defensible should that be evaluated. So when we're talking about mandatory submission, that voluntary, we can kind of take our modifiers that we know and split them right down the middle. Some are only for those covered services, and then the others are for those services that are never covered. Let's do that again. Some are for those mandatory submissions, that mandatory AV, and when it comes into play, and some are for the voluntary. So again, when we are submitting for those spinal CMT services, it's either active. Remember our either or, it's either active or maintenance. It's either AT or hopefully you got the ABN form and it's GA. If you didn't get the ABN form, it's that third one down in the list. It's GZGs. Why did I forget to get that ABN form? Now I can't collect from anybody. Then we split that difference. We go down to the voluntary. Remember, we said it's those exams, therapies, x-rays, all that nice stuff. And every one of those that Medicare never, ever, ever covers, no matter what you do, gets a GY. GY Medicare, did you not cover that? And then from there, we may have other modifiers that come into play. So let's say we're doing 97 codes or that G0283, we have to add that GP. Got PT? They have to have a pairing of modifiers on the physical medicine services. And there's that one right smack dab in the middle that I told you about. If you want to use the voluntary ABN form, that's the third one. That's why we say don't even fool with it. But don't worry, we're going to cover that a little bit more as we go along. So first, we're going to talk about the covered services. ABNs are mandatory for the spinal CMT services when they are for maintenance. We would never hit the patient when they first come to our office with an ABN with a spinal CMT service listed on it, unless for some reason you have somebody coming in that starts as a maintenance patient. Typically, that's not what we have. So if your ABN that you're issuing from the very first visit has spinal CMT service on it, it's wrong. You need to correct that and just pay really close attention here today to what we're discussing here in these slides. When that spinal CMT services crosses over to being maintenance, you do have to provide the patient the ABN then. That's when it comes out. It's conditional. It stays hidden. Medicare patient goes along making their track up and they start to stalemate. They just start bouncing around up here, same predictable behavior, maybe coming less often. That point where they get up here and start, get that ABN out, switch your AT, turn it off, and bring on your GA modifier. You're going to see this in a minute on my screen, how it kind of ebbs and flows. That ABN form, once it's signed, can last you up to 1 year if it's not interrupted in segments somewhere along the way where that patient goes back into active care. So they started maintenance here and they started a new active care here. Guess what happened to this ABN form? It got smushed right in the middle. It's no longer active the minute they go back in. But let's say they went that full year and it didn't get interrupted, full year, get a new one. When they come out of active again and start another stretch, get a new one. And those again can remain active for up to 1 year as long as they are not interrupted. So Medicare gives us some additional guidance here. You can see in bullet point 2, this is another, just reiterating why you have to use them for the mandatory. Medicare would usually cover it. It's just under this circumstance, they will not, and they wouldn't consider it medically reasonable and necessary. This again, like I said, we're going to come to you with proof before we say it. This is straight out of a Medicare guidance and the horse's mouth. This is something that we use here at KMC University for our clients. And this is kind of a way for you to ask yourself, do they need an ABN? Do they not need an ABN? Well, number one, is it a spinal CMT service? That's the first question. And then from there, you just kind of go through the algorithms of branching off and do I need one here? Do I need one there? What do I need to do? This is just a great resource. And you can see that we've got a lot of the information built in for a lot of the new situations we're going through with the QMB and if non-par and those type of things. So the DC is the one who decides. Do not expect your front desk person to pull it out of their hat when this patient is going to be maintenance unless it came from you as a clinical decision. It's got to exit your mouth, exit your thinking, discharging that patient from that active phase of care, and only you know. And when you sit back, doctor, and you ask yourself, is this maintenance or is it not? Do you have a subluxation present that is capable of causing a significant neuromuscular skeletal condition? And does that patient have documented loss of function that can be improved? If the answer is no, in this circumstance, for Medicare coverage requirements, medical necessity cannot be established. And right there's your cue. I need an ABN form. Hey, Sally at the front desk, grab me one. Or maybe you take a moment to assess and you got some papers over here on the wall and you go, okay, this one will not be. Mrs. Smith, I just needed to and have your conversation. Medicare does not cover. Have that conversation with that patient, switch them over to maintenance and put a pin. Just put a pin in what just happened, and then you'll have your ABN form for this phase of maintenance care. So I told you we'd talk about that ebb and flow. Someone may go on active care, and then they'll go off. So they'll start active care. So that's a new box 14. And then they'll jump up and they'll make all of their advances that they need to meet. And we'll eventually hit the place where we're going to have to do a new ABN and a GA when they go over to maintenance. Switch AT off, GA on, ABN out. Then we may have a situation where that patient comes back again within that 1 year period and they have a new condition. So now we have a new box 14. That ABN just got smushed back there in that gray area that you see right here. That's squished here. It can't come out anymore. It got interrupted. You're going to use the AAT modifier again, and then that patient's going to eventually cycle off of this phase, and then we'll come back and we're going to have to get a new ABN signed, and that GA is going to come out again. And then if they go back again, just going through this cycle, squishes it in the gray area, and then we start all over, or they continue with that gray area of maintenance with the ABN and the GA modifier for a year. So how does that look, Yvette? On my ABN form, we'll notice several things. One, we talked about some of those common errors, and that's up at the very top where we have it highlighted. Everything that we see highlighted are common mistakes that you will find on an ABN form. Very top is your practice identifying information. Well, who issued the ABN? Nobody can tell anywhere else on this form that it came from your office unless the notifier's up there. So that is one of the 5 common mistakes of the ABN form. Do keep in mind where it has patient name, you do need to have that written there. And then you have the identifier. Please do not put anything that has their social, anything that identifies them truly from a PHI place. Maybe you could use your practice software. It's assigned Mrs. Smith, patient number 1102. Well, 1102 could go there. We don't want to put the patient's MBI, which is that Medicare beneficiary identifier, nor do we want to put that social security number. So then we skip down to some of these areas where it did say D. If you've got one of those that just says D all throughout and nothing is written in there, it's not valid. If you have just blanks where you're seeing these highlights, it's not valid. So let's go. D is where all those highlights are, where you see maintenance care. Here's one of them here, one here, and we have one up here. It's driving from this information that you have here. So chiropractic maintenance care. Remember, what are the three that are covered, but sometimes not payable? 98940, 98941, 98942. Now tell us why. Medicare patient doesn't understand. It's still hard to explain to them sometimes. It's because Medicare does not pay for chiropractic maintenance care. That's simple. That's all you need to put. And then we come over to this is box F. This is the estimated cost. When we come here, there is a lot of discrepancy out there on what to put. You have two options. Two options are this. You can use your fee schedule, whatever you charge to everyone, you send off to your highest payer, let's say PI. Maybe that's 50, 60, $70 tiering up through those services. Or you have the option of using the Medicare allowable fee. Now, make sure you're babysitting that every year. But in order to make sure this is all bulletproof the whole way through, go ahead and create a policy and say, I am going to use the Medicare allowable fee for the spinal CMT services that are not medically necessary for maintenance, and then use it. Apply it consistently across the board. Don't hunt and peck and go this way or that way. Be consistent. So you've got to fill it out. This is part of those 5 common areas. You saw how many of them we've already ticked off right here. This ABN form, again, make sure something I see all the time. It's one of my core questions I ask here when we're taking in a new client. Do you always use the AT modifier when submitting for spinal CMT services to Medicare? Yes. Do you ever change it? No, I didn't know I needed to. We got an ABN. Okay, something's not jiving here. The AT is not something that you use all of the time. Again, you saw in that last slide, it went up, it stalemated, and we went to an ABN and a GA modifier. We came back down, we went to an AT and back up. That ABN form is a GA modifier if it's signed ahead of time. So the patient has options. Don't tell them which one to pick. You're not allowed. However, when it comes to QMB, check out that Medicare ABN form. It says you have to tell the QMB patient that they have to pick option 1. You can't have them pick option 2. And there's all kinds of bells and whistles that you have to do in order to fix this ABN form the way they want it for a QMB patient. But this is going to be your I'm a PAR provider or I'm non-PAR accepting assignment. This is what your ABN would look like. They would choose option 1. Should they want you to bill Medicare, you can still charge them. They want you to bill Medicare just so they can see what happens. Oftentimes, you'll see this when somebody has a true secondary. I'm not going into depth on this, but I do encourage you to keep in mind if you verified that secondary insurance and they do not cover maintenance, that you alert them if they do pay you for that maintenance service. Option 2 says, I do want the service. Don't fool with bill and Medicare. I'll just pay you now. But do understand they can come back within 1 year and change their mind, make a notation on the ABN stating otherwise. Or they may say, option 3, if Medicare is not paying, I'm not having this service. And that really should be a cue in your office that the doctor should be alerted to at least speak with the patient, that they're not following medical advice. And maybe the importance of maintenance care hasn't been reiterated to them, or they don't understand that importance. As you see down at the very bottom, we have the new ABN form, what it looks like, and it's going to expire. Let's see if they hit their target of 6/30/2023. Again, it's kind of that 3-year period. That was the date that it obviously got approved this year was 6/30, and we will be using this form if you're on still 3/11, if you're on 3/2020, make sure this is implemented by the end of this month. Quickly, When we're talking about the Medicare ABN form and you are non-par, not accepting assignment, there are specific rules. With the specific rules, you have got to cross through one of the last lines in option one. As you see there, one line strike through. Don't scribble it. One line strike through, as you see here. If Medicare does pay, you will refund any payments I made to you, less copays or deductibles. It has to be crossed out because you don't accept assignment. The patient gets reimbursed at home. It just makes that whole option one make more sense relative to you being par or non-par. They also give some guidance on box H, and they say if you're going to strike through because you're non-par, not accepting assignment, if you're going to strike through that sentence in option one, you've got to put this information in box H. Now, there's a reason I didn't include it today, is because the ABN form instruction was better this year. They said if you are a supplier or provider, then put box H. In the past, it's been if you are a supplier. Now, I went to Medicare a couple years ago and I said, wait a minute, you're saying we're a supplier. Yes, a chiropractor is a supplier. I could show you the email. You've got to put it there. But it doesn't make sense. The wording is just not clear. If you're going to say in your guidance that a supplier and provider have to put it there, then why leave only in that box H language that you provide the word only supplier? And it really doesn't make good sense. So we've gone back again. Hey, do you realize? Thank you for clarifying that it is for the provider and the supplier, but the language is a little strange. Can you clarify that for me? So the jury's still out, and you'll see later, they're still scratching their head and thinking about it. Quickly, let's switch gears. Let's go over to that right-hand side. Member mandatory submission, the mandatory voluntary. This is over on the voluntary side, the statutorily excluded, and it's all those services listed below. Medicare said, remember that you don't have to use the official ABN form. Now, think back several screens where I gave you that split. This would be the mandatory ABN, and we had three modifiers, and then we had three down here, and it was that middle one. We don't want to use another one, but the minute you pull out an ABN form for voluntary notice, there's a whole new set of rules, and you have to include another modifier. Save yourself. You saw it back there. It was straight from Medicare. You don't have to do it. So have your aha moment and just skip it. Here's what I was talking about right here, that GX modifier. You don't have to have it. Don't put yourself through the torture of having to go and put another modifier on there. Use some other type of notice. We can see here some of their specific languages. The ABN also serves as an optional voluntary notice that you may use to forewarn beneficiaries. Medicare does not require you to use an ABN in order to bill a beneficiary for an item or service that is not a Medicare benefit and never covered. Right there it is. It's straight from Medicare. It's not just from Yvette. It's not just from KMC University. It's from Medicare. And we can also see when you use, here goes that room air leaving, when you issue an ABN form and a voluntary notice, the patient doesn't sign it. They're like, what? And they don't select option one, two, or three. It's their rule. It's coming straight from them. They don't do it. That's why we just feel, why do you even want to go through that? Why don't you consider, you can, it'll look something similar to this. You don't put your spinal CMT services on it, but why don't you just go the route of putting it on your office letterhead and saying, hey, Dr. Smith and I would like to welcome you to our clinic. We just want you to know how Medicare acts. They won't cover these things. But again, if you're going to do it, don't list your spinal CMT services because that has to be on the mandatory. This brings out that GY modifier, but you don't have to include that extra one, GX, because you used your own form. So our recommendation, mandatory CMT services, you have to use the official ABN form for traditional Medicare. For all the other services, do yourself a favor. Don't chase your own tail. Stick you a signature line on here, have the patient sign it, give them a copy, much like you are required to give them a copy of that mandatory ABN form. You'll have it for their records. You have it for theirs. They've been notified. You've dotted your I's, you've crossed your T, and everything's okay. Quickly, This is still a huge area where we have asked about 6 extra questions from Medicare regarding the QMB, and we're going to be showing you that we are covering those things and asking for those. We talked about it last time, how you can't bill them for those spinal CMT services when they are with Medicare in an active phase of care, but they went as far as to say you can't charge them for the maintenance until the claim's adjudicated. We're asking them, like, but wait, you never cover it. We want more information. Make it applicable to chiropractic so we know what we're talking about. So option one, they crossed through one line, but they left the last sentence uncrossed through. We're asking them, why did you not cross through that? So we're sitting here and we're waiting. And it says again that if you don't accept Medicare assignment, option one, put box H. We're still asking them about box H and asking those questions. But you can see they have you cross through more words on this QMB ABN than you do when you're non-par not accepting assignments. So there's all kinds of new rules that you need to be aware of. And again, we're asking for clarity for the very last sentence of option one. Why did you not cross it off? Why did you leave it off when you gave the guidance? You need to explain yourself. They have additional edits that they require. It needs to cross over, but in order for it to cross over, you got to enroll with Medicaid. Go watch the webinar I did back on July 14th for more information on that. And then it talks even more about what it means if Medicare denies and then Medicaid denies, then you can come back and give patient liability back to that patient because you did the ABN form the way they told you to. And again, you can see there's just a lot that came out, but there's still a lot to be determined when it comes to QMB. However, there is enough information that has been released in those ABN form instructions that you need to be looking at it, making the modifications. You will actually have 3 different ABNs in your practice. Medicare for the spinal CMT services. You'll have your PAR, your non-PAR accepting assignment. That's one. You'll have your Medicare not accepting assignment, PAR not accepting, that's 2. And then you'll have your QMB. Your QMB is going to look a little bit like both of them. It's really a hybrid that you'll have there. And this is just kind of a recap of something that I had in the last thing that I taught, where you've got to have the enrollment with Medicaid to get it all the way through. We're asking more questions for you because we want to know if we're going to instruct it, they need to be crystal clear. Just as a recap, August 31st is your deadline. Get it installed now, be ahead of the game, be keeping your ears to the ground as we're pushing them to give more answers to the chiropractic profession. And who knows, we're probably answering somebody else's. This is what I told you about. I'm standing outside that jury box and I'm like, come on, hurry up. You've given us a deadline. We want to do it right. We don't want to do it wrong. And right here, this is the email to me from them. Highlight below, down here. Good afternoon. Thank you for your inquiry. We will get back to you after the internal parties have been able to discuss this. Thank you again. So you can see we're asking and we're still waiting. We just got that last week and I looked this morning and we're still have the jury out on that. We ask you if you would like to join KMC for any of our upcoming events. There is a link here on the screen where you can see all of our upcoming events. Click and join them, RSVP for them. We're here for you. You can see our short list here. Follow that link, go out to our website and take advantage of all that nice stuff that we offer all the time. Or we may be in your area. I'm going to be in Nebraska here on the 23rd of August, teaching on Medicare starting at 8 a.m. in the morning for 4 hours for CE. So if any of you are going to be there, at least wave at me. I think we've got some social distancing rules. And as always, if you have a question that we can help you with, anything we can do for your practice, reach out to us at info@kmcuniversity.com and you will see that the phone number is listed there. Now, as for ChiroSecure, thank you again for having me. But let's talk about next week. Next week, we have Dr. Janice Hughes that she will be joining you. She'll be teaching you next week, and you surely don't want to miss that time. Again, thank you. This was Yvette Noel, CPCO for KMC University. I'm their education director. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.